where we're learning how to weave our own pain into light, is the hero's journey. How we're learning to be wise about our struggles and then impart that wisdom. That's the story that wants to be told. In Rilke's letters to a young poet, this poet wrote him exactly what people in solo shows do all the time. I want to write about love. I want it to be about love. And love is like this thing that I read in a book. And then he wrote all these poems that sounded like things that were love in a book. They had nothing to do with him. Nothing at all. Nothing to do with his true darker emotions. Nothing to do with how he felt not worthy of love and how that was getting in the way. Like, it wasn't examined. It was what he thought he wanted to write about. I want to write a rom-com. So I never, ever, ever in my technique ask people to know what they're going to write beforehand. What we work on in this class may end up being a screenplay. It may end up being a novel. It may end up being like a spoken word poem a la Spalding Gray meets Daniel Beatty. It may end up being a stand-up show. Well, one thing for certain is it's going to have fully realized stories, which is why I have a very specific list of solo artists that I say watch, because they have combined storytelling, a little bit of stand-up, but mostly the story is driven by their deepest emotional chords, by the thing that they're struggling with, right? It's the difference between Eddie Murphy, Chris Rock, and Richard Pryor. All brilliant, all funny. Richard Pryor made you think about life and death. He went to the edge of life and death. Something very distinctive. First of all, there's no filter, right? Watch his early stuff. When he becomes a character, his grandmother, his aunt, and his daughter, Rain Pryor, who's a friend of mine, does it too. They go to the darkest part of a person's soul, and they jump in that character and start talking like them, and they let you see the darkness. And they go, but you know, fuck it. Right? It's watch how you want to squirm a little bit in your seat as you watch them. It's a little uncomfortable. Whoopi Goldberg's first Broadway show. You can buy the DVD on Amazon. I mean, not the DVD. It's only available on VCR. I think the 20th reunion is, but the stories are not always comfortable because they're about what really happened, not what people said happened, not the story that we think should be told, the story that wants to be told. This was the life lesson that I was put here to learn. This is a life lesson I was put here to impart to you all, right? I'm very woo-woo for numerology and astrology because I'm very into psychology. And there's a thing in astrology called the True Node North, which is actually the very difficult life lesson that supposedly either your ancestors didn't get or you didn't get in another lifetime. And it's the one thing that you're going to continue to stumble over in this lifetime until you learn the lesson. And I actually thought that was really brilliant. I was like, oh, this is psychology. Oh, okay. What is the fatal flaw? Right? So until you know your fatal flaw, you're going to have a hard time taking your hero through their fatal flaw. Right? I actually thought a solo show was really, really easy because I actually wrote a solo show that wasn't about me. I was like, I'm not gonna write about me. Fuck that shit. That shit's too painful. I need more therapy. I was like, so I wrote about my family. I wrote about a generation of men who I found moving, whose politics work. Hi, Brittany. That's what I wrote about. And in that exploration, I fell in love with very broken people, which is what you have to do. You have to fall in love with your characters and not the noble shit they did. The noble shit they did in spite of where they were broken. You have to fall in love with them. Otherwise, it's just standing there being therapy. Bad therapy, too. Like, not even good therapy. Like, Eugene O'Neill did some good therapy on that stage, But that's because he was an epic writer and he was totally engaged in the psychological hero's journey. I mean, his plays are fucking 4 hours. I was like, how long is his alcoholic brother gonna talk in an alcoholic stupor? Like, seriously? But because he was a writer, writing like a Greek tragedian, he is taking you through this man's entire life with such compassion, right? Structure covered the therapy there. So then it became not just, oh, this is Eugene O'Neill's family. This is the life of man from birth to death. If you watch any Room for the Misbegotten, if you watch any of his plays, you're like, oh, okay, this is the human journey. The first man to become an addict. Let's watch it unfold. It's very complicated. And you can tell he studied the hero's journey. It's in all of his writings. It's through the lens of his family, but it's definitely a deep understanding of the psychological journey of the character, all of the inherited problems that his family has that they continue to repeat over and over and over again, and that he repeats in his own life. He's very conscious of how those epic fatal flaws unfold and how everybody deals with them. And that comes from learning how to treat your characters as heroes, learning how to listen to them and have compassion for them. And I found it hardest to write. Solo show was easy because I just wrote about other people that I admired. The part that was complicated was when I had to figure out how they got these really fucked up problems that were just like mine. Those were the last scenes I could write. I was like, my parents got divorced because of some behavior that I have. No, but it's something that both of them have in each other that I have. That's a life struggle. Of course I inherited that behavior. My next play was about my great grandmother. I'm like, I was like, I gave it to the dramaturg of the public theater, and she was like, this is brilliant, but the star is the least developed. I was like, wait, what? I was like, wait. I did all this research, it's epic. She was like, what's her lesson? And I was like, her lesson was my problem. It's about vulnerability, and vulnerability is strength, right? She had a very specific, I set up the hero's journey. Her Joseph Campbell. She went all through these, but then when it was time to her resolve it, I couldn't write that scene because I hadn't resolved it. So the subconscious is why the daily writer's ritual, the dreaming out loud ritual, is incredibly important. Because it's the key to the subconscious stuff that you either want to tell them the script you already have or the script you don't have that you know you need to be writing, but you think you're supposed to be writing something else. Like Brittany thinks she's supposed to be writing something else. But really, there's another story that wants to be told. So she's like, this feels like therapy. I was like, well, until you therapize and therapize your characters, you can't really tell them. This is imperative for Anne because there are 50,000 Zora Neale Hurston shows. 50,000. 50. And then she got a whole bunch of books. It's on the New York Times bestseller list. So why should somebody see your solo show? What is the angle that you're going to take on Zora Neale Hurston that nobody else has? That's why I posted that quote about spirituality. I believe I tagged you in it, Anne, maybe on Instagram. That's a very unknown idea about her. She is kind of radical in an unexpected conservative way, right? So you're going to have to spin. Right? It's like Che Guevara's life story. So there's a movie about it that's kind of crazy and all over the place. But before that, there was a Motorcycle Diaries. And it is a very particular angle that the screenwriter took in telling that story. Everybody knows Che Guevara. They all want to put on the fucking hat. Run in the jungle. Revolution. Okay. Para Fidel. Okay. We're guerrillas. All the glamour shit. The Motorcycle Diaries is completely compelling. There is no action. There's guerrilla warfare. But he found an angle to tell this coming of age story. And what he basically said, I'm going to make the story of Che Guevara a coming of age story. Nobody's done that. How did he become revolutionized? How did he go from middle class kid with lots of money to totally revolutionized? How did Zora Neale Hurston go from the unknown greatest intellect of her generation to a poor black woman dying in Florida? How do we get there? How do we, that's fucked up, right? She was like, you know, a life lesson for me. I was like, don't become Zora Neale Hurston. People are like, you're so brilliant. I was like, just like Zora Neale Hurston, I don't want to die a poor black woman in Florida. That's how I started, right? I haven't heard that story yet, right? We haven't heard it. What is there? What's inside there that made that happen? That's extremely interesting, right? It's the angle from which you decide if you're going to say, I'm going to do this historical thing about this, or I'm going to do this historical thing about my time in college being, oh my God, it's so bad. Like, Emil, like, dude, like, they don't even know what to do with you. They're like, he's not Chinese, he's Japanese, he's not Japanese, he's not black, is he Chicano? What does that mean? Oh my God, I don't know. Like, oh my God, like, if white people don't have names for shit, it's stressful. They take you through shit. And they're like, well, we don't know where to put it. Well, is he going to be really smart? Can you play the doctor? But I don't know. I mean, he's just Filipino. Like, I don't know. Like, oh my God. That's like the unnamed other has a whole bunch of problems. I was like, every Filipino dude I know is crazy. Well, that's because they're all married to black women. So sorry. Maybe that means so their entire house is butt fuck crazy. And I was like, what is happening here? He's like, I'm just married to a black woman. She's telling me how I should deal. And I'm like, okay. But it's an unknown quantity, right? So some of the rules are like being another person of color, but not all of them. You also come from a culture with like a lot of mixed up stuff. Like, they're as crazy as I am.
Yeah.
Asian and Spanish and French, like, that's a lot.
Colonized.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. Like, a lot of different people, but then people who are all mixed up manage to stay connected and create a culture, which is unique. Usually when people are colonized, one culture dominates. Very few places have I actually seen the cultures actually meld and become one. Usually they war with each other and kill each other out.
It's the Creole culture, right?
Right? It like actually works. It's a very complicated place with lots of unspoken rules for societal engagement. So what take are you going to have on telling your story of immersing yourself? I mean, you have a good therapist?
Me?
You seem really normal. Like, Emil went to Harvard, and I'm like, okay, so you're Filipino, and then you went to the bastion of male supremacy whiteness. I mean, people from Harvard, you're like, oh, where do you went to school? Oh, well, I went to school in Cambridge. Oh, bitch, just say you went to school at Harvard. You ain't got to say it's Cambridge. Like, there's this level of pretense.
No, we say we went to Boston. So in Boston.
Oh, God, just say you went to Harvard, bitch. We know you smart. Okay? We know you smart. Right? Go to Harvard. It's like, there's an entire language to decode there. You have class, you have race, you have gender, you have notions about race, and then you have the 1%. And you have to learn the rules for dealing with the 1%. Most of us never meet the 1%. You know, the founding fathers from the Mayflower, whose family actually did build this building, like, whose family actually does own half of the world. Like, those people live in rarefied air. What are the rules for engagement? Because I went to school in a similar place, both for prep school and college, and had a meltdown as a result because I had no equipment to deal with class. It would be like, you know, a Dickensian character being thrown into the court of Elizabeth, the Queen. That kid has no information for how to deal with this. How do you bow? How do you talk? The other thing that I can relate it to is maybe Japanese culture. where I'm like, okay, so there's a different introduction for each person based on what their relationship and age is to you. So you have to address people between 60 and 69 this way, and then you have all these rules for how to approach them. Are you fucking kidding me? There's all of these rules. There would be no way for me, not growing up in Japanese culture, to ever learn all of the rules of that culture. That's kind of like what entering that world of Harvard and Yale is like. It's a different language, just completely different. And then the people that could probably help you, like your classmates, aren't even aware of how different it is. Yeah. Like I had a roommate who was a legacy. I went to school for 2 years at this school and didn't know what's legacy. A legacy? She's a legacy. What is a legacy? I was like, what's a legacy?
Yeah, good legacy.
What's a legacy? Oh, legacy is, are we gonna have food? Like that legacy. She's like, you're like, no, my last name is, what is her name? I can't call her name right now. Oh my God, it's gonna come to me in a minute. Shiva. My last name is Shiva. Oh, it's really great. No, this building, it's named after me. No. But this building's been here for like 400 years. How do you talk to someone like that? Like, what are you going to enter into the conversation? I'm like, oh, you're a billionaire heiress and you still own ships that slaves were brought over on. Okay, I don't know what to do with that. I had a roommate like that. She was like, yeah, and Metropolitan Mutual's an insurance company, and they brought the most slaves to Boston. And my family founded that company. So now we're trying to divest. I'm like, I can't even have this conversation with you. Like, she's like, yeah, and those 4 streets in front of the big church on Wall Street, yeah, slaves died there, and we just paid some money to bring their bones up because we built that. I'm like, I can't just, where do you are in the conqueror's world, and you're there for them to teach you something. That's a story. But how do we enter into that if that's not our experience?
Yeah.
Tell me that. That's what makes the solo work and the story you're telling deeper. Because you decide there's got to be an angle. What is the one thing here that I feel outside of? And then explore why. Because everybody's outside is going to be based on what their fatal flaw is, right? For me, going to those schools, my flaw is power. I walk into a room and I decide who has power here. I'm getting that. And I don't stay in a room unless I can get the power. I don't like being not in power. I'm very alpha that way, right? And it's a flaw. It's not always useful. It's very destructive in personal relationships. But in public relationships, that's my flaw. So of course, the thing that I'm going to stumble over going to an elitist school is I can't have a roommate whose family is rich because of slaves. People are like, that's so long ago. It's like, it's about power. It's like, I couldn't be in the room. I was like, she has a maid. We're in a dorm. I can't. Right? For other people, they were like, oh, she's just weird like that. But that's my fatal flaw. That was the biggest problem for me going to school there. People who had more power over than me. And clearly they did. They had money. Lots of it. And investments. And like one kid could pick up the phone and Coca-Cola could divest from South Africa. That to me was like, how am I so close to this? I grew up in the projects. That's my fatal flaw, right? For my friends from Brooklyn who went to high school here in Brooklyn and they went to the private schools, their being an elitist school, their flaw was that everybody wanted them to get rid of their Brooklyn accent. They felt like, you're trying to take my blackness. I was like, really? That's your big problem with being in this school? It was. Or the girls from Long Island, don't call me trash. I'm going to straighten my hair. That was their biggest problem. I was like, your problems can be deeper. But everybody enters something from their fatal flaw. What is the thing that in your life you keep stumbling over? That's your way into the character you're writing. And in the morning pages, you're going to find the illness, but not the tragic flaw. So if you did the morning pages and you went through that exercise, did everybody get to the point where you started making lists of recurring themes? Got to write a lot of pages for that to happen. No? That's okay. As long as you got some morning pages in front of you?
Yes.
Great. We're going to generate some things. Can I use your example you used in class the other day, Brittany?
Yeah,
Cynical.
are we talking about the story, the lunchroom story?
The cynical.
Oh, the cynical, yeah.
So we have recurring themes come up, which you're going to find in your morning pages. Those are your key to whatever you're struggling with these stories. The outline, I can teach you story structure in a minute. The underbelly of what's missing is the specificity of the life lesson here. What is the true nose that your heroine is wrestling with? What is it? What is it? What is it? Are you guys getting an echo?
Yeah, I am.
I'm going to try and turn off your phone. How about that now? No, that sucks. No.
A little bit.
But it's really loud for me. So let me go. We're going to start making lists. And the example, I always like you to know why I'm about to make you do so much fucking work, is in this exercise, we came up with recurring themes, recurring emotions, recurring ideas. And one of Brittany's, and then we have to take these themes, cut them up into little pieces of paper, put them into a bowl or a jar. That's your dream jar. Every day you're going to take a slip of paper out of there and freeform write based on that piece of paper. The first thing that Brittany picked, and I do believe you draw to you what you are, right? So whatever you picked is something you need to be dealing with. And one of the things that she picked was cynical. And I was like, tell me a story of when you were cynical. And it was very hard for her to remember the details of that story. And that's a clue. That's a place you don't like to go. So that's actually a place that you need to start going. Right? I always pick up vulnerable. Fuck this shit. Fuck this shit. Always. Vulnerable. Love. The expectation of good. It's all going to work out. Power. I always pick my fucked up shit. You got to face it. Because it's what's going to make your character deeper. You've heard that phrase, you can't write what you don't know. You can certainly try, and it'll be like All My Children or a soap opera. But when you write from your deepest knowing, the knowing that you actually don't even want to talk about, that writing is like, I can't stop watching it. I can't stop watching it. This is riveting. That's what makes it riveting. And the writers that I listed in the writing list write that way, right? And I always say Stephen King is like, you need to write. I have the Stephen King book on writing on that list because structurally he talks about writing. And the single most important thing he says is write every day. And this I learned from the morning pages. Here's what happens when you don't write every day. Okay, I write every Sunday. My client, David Newer, he's all over my website. We've got a show off Broadway. David Newer taught and had this crazy schedule. He taught school at night, acted during the day. And I was like, David, you have to write every day. I can't. So what he would do is wait until Sunday. He would write for 12 hours every Sunday. And then he would meet with me. First he took classes, and then he moved to private coaching because he was like, I'm finishing this year. And I've been writing it for 4 years. And I was like, great, fine. Every week, he would only have like 10 really good pages. I was like, you need to do all this research about the school and interview these kids. You got to write more than 10 pages, dude. It's like, you should be like 100 pages a week. I was like, I mean, we've been writing for a long time. Come on, dude. And he's like, but this is what I come out with. But he got like 4 or 5 good pages out of that 10 pages for that 12 hours. And I said, you know why it's going so slowly? Because you're writing once a week. So what you have to do is when you start writing on Sunday, you have to remember everything that happened the previous Sunday. You have to either have to reread it or rethink it through so that you come back to where you left off with the story. You have to remember your storytelling. That's why. But if you write, and I said to him, I was like, if you wrote 10 minutes a day instead of 12 hours on Sunday, you'd have more writing. It's your learning curve, but it's also your memory, your storytelling memory. And Stephen King writes about this on writing. He has a tiny room with no stimuli, no windows, nothing. He goes in there and he sits there for 6 hours every day, whether something happens or not. And all it is him and the computer, no internet, just him and that laptop. His family has to leave sandwiches on a tray outside the door. He's not to be interrupted. Right? He has a rule. Sometimes he may call to somebody and be like, can you bring me water? And everybody has to leave it at the door and not interrupt him. Because he's like, I'm bullshitting because I don't want to write. He's like, so then I just sit there and go, what the fuck am I writing? Just like the morning pages. Stay on the page. People always ask me, why do you make me do these morning pages every day? Because you've not learned to stay on the page. Every day, even when nothing's coming. Once you learn how to do that, the story will come faster. And the story will come authentically and in the first draft. I'm telling you, I swear to God. The year I finally started to write my solo show, I had finally got myself to 16 morning pages every single day. Take something out of the jar, write 16. And then I rented a space, and me and my friends who were my official storyteller listeners sat, and I would look through my morning pages for a story, and I would start talking for 6 hours. I did that 1 weekend a month for a year. The 50-page solo show that I have, all of the individual one-person monologues came directly from that recording, first time out of my mouth. All we did was transcribe them cold. Why? Because I've been writing those monologues in my morning pages for a year. Fastidiously. I was like, okay, what is the great aunt's problem? I remember picking it up out of the slip of paper. She's so worried about her child not being educated that she's missing everything else. Education, education. You learn how to clean your house. I was like, but what about her spirit? That's the exact monologue I spoke it right out of my mouth, right? They were like, that's perfect just the way it is. How did you get that? I was like, well, a bitch writes 16 pages a day, no matter what. And sometimes more, right? And then when you go to record, right after you've written, which is exactly what I would do. I would write 16 pages every day. If I was doing a storytelling round with my friends, which you guys are going to do in partners this week, I would do my morning pages before I started speaking. And then I would pull something out of the jar. And I had 5 minutes to tell a story. That's it. And if you record, the recorder is going, and then transcribe those pages. What I wrote in the morning pages was messing around and fucking up. You have to tell a story to another person. It becomes real. It just does. So I'm saying all this to say that you gotta trust the process. You gotta trust it. Don't get fixated on your idea of what you're supposed to write. It will come. I would say a good 30% of what you've already written is going to be used, but it's probably not going to be used in the voice that you currently have it in. You may use that story of what happened down at the well, but it actually may end up coming out of somebody else's mouth so your protagonist can learn the lesson. So you're not throwing the bathwater out, but you're gonna go deeper in this process. And I call it dreaming out loud. Or what PhDs, which I didn't get a PhD, people try to get me, but there's too many complicated words. Autoethnography. I had a teacher who was like, so you're working in autoethnography. I'll say, oh, tell them my life story. Please make shit simple. Please, please, please don't do that. I hate academia. I was like, I got a free ride to the University of Michigan to get my PhD. I was like, and then I'm gonna talk like that. And then I can't tell my grandmother something to be like, so you just gonna write about my life and then like figure out what I needed to learn. I was like, yeah, grandma. And she was like, that's all you had to say. You didn't have to she didn't call it auto-ethnic. I was like, it's the auto-ethnography. She was like, just say what you're going to do so I can hear it. And I was like, yeah, say what you're going to do so we can hear it. So it doesn't start outside in. It doesn't start with a bit of intellectual idea. The intellectual idea needs to trigger something. When I read that quote from Zora Neale Hurston, I was like, oh, that triggered something. I want to tell a story about religion and spirituality and how it shaped me. And I went and told a story. So, did you get to do morning pages this morning? Excellent. I would like you to go through your morning pages. I'm going to give you some lists to write on a piece of paper. You're going to cut up those slips of paper later. I would like you to go through your morning pages and make a list of possible stories. Morning pages are great because it's your subconscious. I don't care if you wrote, I don't fucking want to do this 14 times. I don't fucking want to do this. I don't fucking want to do this. I don't fucking want to do this. Okay. That's a potential story. If you made your grocery list or Trader Joe's, that's a potential story. Write it down. Make a list. I'm going to ask you questions about those potential stories.